Welcome to the UNESCO Center for Peace Speaker Series. Today we are very happy and honored to host His Excellency, the Ambassador of Fiji, His Excellency Mr. Winston Thompson. Winston Thompson, welcome to Frederick.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay, so we are delighted to have you here. And many people would like to know, first of all, where is Fiji? Tell us a little bit about your country.
Well, Fiji is a group of islands, an archipelago, about 300 islands altogether, 120 inhabited, south of the equator in the Pacific Ocean. Actually straddles the 180th meridian. The 180th meridian, as you know, is used as the international dateline. And it comes down, except for veering away for those islands to keep them within the same time zone. For instance, when it comes to Fiji, the dateline goes over to the east and then goes down to include Fiji in one time zone, and then goes down, and the same thing with New Zealand. So that's roughly where we are. We're about 7,000 miles southwest of Los Angeles, about 1,400 miles northeast of Australia, and about 1,200 miles north of New Zealand. In flying time, about 11 hours from Los Angeles to Fiji, direct. From New Zealand, about 3 hours, and from Australia, about 4 hours flying.
Wonderful. So as you visit Frederick, a lot of people are wondering about if they would like to go to Fiji. What are some of the things that you would like to tell people about Fiji to get them to be interested in visiting your country?
Well, I think Fiji, like any other place, is unique. You won't get what you get in Fiji anywhere else. You know, the particular mix of the geography, the composition, the history, the architecture, archaeology, the anthropology. For Fiji, we're as I said, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, far from everywhere else. Very pristine environment still. With a group of people who evolved from some thousands of years ago when the ancestors migrated out of the landmass of Asia looking for new places and came out into the Pacific. So there's interesting cultural mix. We've had subsequent infusions of people from India and from many other places to give us a cosmopolitan mix now. In terms of the scenery, we have very diverse landscapes, seascapes, reefs and lagoons. We have some of the best surfing areas in the world. Our tourists, which is now a major industry, people come to relax and experience the pristine environment that we have still.
Okay, thank you, Excellency. What about some of the exports? What are some of the things that, you say tourism is one of the first income generator, but what are the second or third means of revenues?
Yeah, well, when the Pacific was first visited by Europeans in the 1700s and 1800s, they found sandalwood in Fiji. And so the early exploitation of Fiji was to take out the sandalwood, which is very highly prized in Asia. And the exploitation was at such a rate that they took all the sandalwood and left very little behind. Also about the same time was bêche de mer, which is the sea slug, which again a delicacy in Asian cooking. And that also was exploited. So the early industries in Fiji was the sandalwood and sea slug. Subsequently, when we had people settling in, then coconuts were grown for its oil, and it was converted into copra. The kernel was dried and then shipped off to Europe, which processed it for oil. After that came sugarcane growing. A big sugar industry developed by an Australian company called the CSR, and that today, sugarcane farming is still a major industry. We export sugar, raw sugar, to the United States, some, and also to Europe. And of course, since the last few years, the last probably 30 years or so, tourism has risen quite a bit. Fishing has also developed so that we have a cannery. Tuna is caught in our territorial sea, in our economic zone and on the high seas in the Pacific, and landed in Fiji, converted into canned product. We export to the United States not so much as cans, but as frozen cooked loins, which is shipped to California, San Diego, to Bumblebee. We have some other agricultural products that are exported because of the diaspora that we have in North America and in Australia and New Zealand. They still hanker for their foods that they knew when they were growing up, and so those are export markets for us. So reasonably, and of course, Fiji water, which is our biggest export to the United States. And we are very happy that the American public finds it to their taste, and they pay the higher rates for that water than they do for other waters.
Okay, thank you, Excellency. And the other question is that someone like you representing Fiji, people, I think a lot of young people, students, will be watching this interview, and some of them would like to grow up to become an ambassador. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about you, how you came to be here, your background, some of the things you did in school, and also even before getting there, how's the educational system over there in your country?
Well, I think the process of becoming an ambassador would differ in different countries. Yeah. In our case, because we're such a small country, we didn't have, although it's changing recently, a dedicated foreign service, because we're only less than 1 million people, and therefore we don't have many overseas missions. Right now we have 18, but we've increased it only within the last 5 years we've virtually nearly doubled it over the last 5 years. Before that, after we became independent in 1970, we only had 4 overseas missions. So the way our diplomatic group was selected is they've chosen people, like in my case, I studied agriculture. I went to university, in fact, in Trinidad and Tobago, and went back and worked in agriculture for 18 years, then got moved around in the Fiji Public Service to other departments. And when I was 45, nearing retirement, because we had options to retire early in Fiji,
wow.
The government said, well, you've got the experience of this country and this government, you know how the system works, you can be assigned overseas as one of our prime representatives, because you don't need any new additional training.
Yeah.
So that's how ours were being chosen. In a sense, it is still that way now, although I think now we have a bigger base to select from, and we can probably train our ambassadors from within the foreign service that we have now. As I said, we have 18 overseas missions. Each mission is not very many staff in it. Like here, we have only 2 diplomats. We had 3 diplomats. And the most we would have in the bigger missions would probably be 6, whereas many other countries have in the hundreds.
Yes.
So in that way, for somebody aspiring to be a diplomat, I suppose the main advice would be to work hard and show that you are interested in the broad fields, not just in a narrow specialty, and so that you can relate to virtually any subject when you're being considered possibly for a diplomatic appointment.
Okay, thank you, Excellency. So the educational system in your country, you've been in the U.S. As ambassador for about 6 years. So if you were to compare the system between Fiji and the U.S., what are some of the things that are the same and some of the differences?
Yeah, well, we were a British colony, and Fiji was different from most colonies in that we never got forcibly occupied. If you look at the history of colonialism, most of the colonies that were taken over by usually the European colonial powers, they were sort of invaded and taken over. In our case, in about the middle of the 1800s, our leaders, our chiefs at the time, were very concerned about all these colonial exploiters, because we had in the Pacific, as you probably know, you had the French, the Americans, the Germans, the British, the Dutch, all vying. They had carved up the rest of the world, and they were coming here to take over the Pacific. So our leaders said, we've got to choose, we've got to look at these people and choose the one that seems to be the best. And so they looked around, and in the end, it chose the British. They thought the British were probably the best of a bad lot. And that's how we became British.
That's
so
interesting.
We weren't forcibly occupied. So Fiji became British by a deed of cession. Our leaders signed a document ceding Fiji to or inviting the British to take over the country. In fact, Queen Victoria of England. So we have been brought up in the British system of education, and similar to Australia and New Zealand. So naturally, our teachers, many of them have come from Australia and New Zealand. When we were our people wanted to go to university, they were close, Australia and New Zealand. As I said, they're only 3 and 4 hours flight time away. And so most of our tertiary training was done in Australia and New Zealand. And the school systems, I think now, as the years have gone by, most of the schools around the world have converged in terms of the things that they have studied. I think there's more interchange. We've had American teachers also. We've had the Peace Corps who've been in Fiji since 1968. And in the beginning, many of them, or probably most of them, were involved in the schools, in teaching. So they brought American, I suppose, models and
way of
ideas.
Thinking.
Way of thinking. Yeah. In fact, the American Peace Corps, we've now had probably about 2,200 Peace Corps who've been to Fiji and returned, as I said, since 1968. I remember being in the government when the first lot arrived, and because our societies are comparatively traditional, these young, usually they were young, sort of rebellious type people came, and they wouldn't accept the local conditions. They encouraged the youth of our villages to sort of don't accept, take things for granted and get out there and do things.
Yeah.
They caused a bit of a stir, especially among the older leadership.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it was all for the better that this happened.
Okay. I don't know, there's a story about this American that whose house was burned. I don't know if that's something, it's a nice, interesting story. That I don't know, that's something you may share. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it was one of the reasons why the Fijian chiefs decided they had to ask Britain to become the colonial power.
Yes.
There was an American consul called John Williams in Fiji, and in 1849, I think it was, he was celebrating July 4th.
Yes.
And he lived on a small island off the main island. And he had his trading post there as well. And when his houses caught fire, evacuating all his belongings out of these, he asked the Fijian villagers around to help move the stuff. But instead of just taking it out of the house and leaving it on the beach, they loaded it into their canoes and sailed off into the night. Went off. So the American consul then demanded of the Fijian chiefs compensation.
Yes.
45,000 pounds, I think it was in those days, which was quite a small fortune, which the chiefs couldn't raise. So they then asked the British consul to please, can you ask the British government to take over Fiji as a colony and pay this American off?
Interesting.
So
That's a
it didn't work at that time, but eventually it worked and Fiji became a British colony. But that was one of the sort of instigators.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to thank you very much for your kind invitation. You just, you arrived here this morning. You were able to meet with the county executive, John Gardner. You met the mayor, Randy Clayman. You met the president of the university. You met a number of people. I would like to conclude by asking you, you still have the afternoon to go through. You went to Barbara Fritchie. So I want to, what is the one thing that you can say about, this is your first time in Frederick, tell us what you are feeling at this moment about Frederick so far.
Well, I find it very pleasant. I'm surprised in a way because I've been here 6 years, but never come to Frederick. And so I'm grateful for the invitation that you've extended that enabled me to come here. And as I was explaining earlier, when I went to school, one of the poems we learnt was about Barbara Fritchie. And so I asked when we were coming up here, was this the same place that Barbara Fritchie was at? And that was confirmed that it was. So, and you've kindly taken me to the location where this happened. So, it really blows my mind in a way to think that those many years ago when I was a young schoolboy, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that I would one day be standing outside the cottage where this famous poem is all about. So I'm really grateful for that. And the experience has been wonderful. I've met some wonderful people, very friendly. And I think it's symptomatic of my experience in America generally, that wherever we have gone, myself and my wife and our kids, we've been welcomed, we've been, it's really been a very pleasant experience. And I go home very happy of having had a very worthwhile time, learned a lot. Hopefully I've contributed something to informing Americans of Fiji.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. You know, you spend your life as a diplomat here, bringing the two countries together. I think you are doing a wonderful job, and you are stay here today. Just continue to make that happen. So we really want to thank you, Excellency.
Thank you.
And I look forward, anyone who's interested to travel in Fiji. We now have UNESCO Center for Peace now have a direct relationship with the embassy. We hope you'll be inviting us next time when you have independence or any activities, so that we'll stay close and work together to make sure that this rapprochement between the United States and Fiji keeps on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Okay, thank you.